Hello everyone, welcome to my iPad desk setup tour. This is going to be a really special one because I think it's just perfected. It's been, 7 years I've been working on this channel using my iPad Pro for my artwork. I basically sit here at my command center with my monitors and my MacBook over there to run everything. And I can't wait to show you all the little tricks and tips I use to just make this super harmonious for me. So without further ado, we're going to deconstruct this, starting off with my iPad Pro. So with my desk cleared here, the only thing you're seeing is my FlexiSpot Kana bamboo table and then my really nice leather Hexcal desk pad. This is my M2 iPad Pro, and behind it is a hunk of copper that I glued to the back of it. Now, why did I do this? Well, it was to help with the cooling. Now, this sounds really crazy, right? Like, why the hell do you need to have a copper heatsink glued to the back of your iPad, especially one this big? I have found with the tasks that I do, cooling my iPad has made a huge difference. It turns out that the M2 chip is actually right here in the center of the iPad Pro. So I thought copper is an excellent transfer of heat, especially when it is in a really tight system like this. Another material that is excellent at transferring heat is aluminum, and that's a big reason why Apple designs the iPad with a full aluminum back. So the more surface area you have, the more heat can be released over time. Now, before we continue, let me just say right now, I do not recommend that you do this because it will definitely void your warranty, and Apple is definitely not happy with the fact that I did this. And I don't think I would ever be able to give it back to get a discount on my next iPad because I can't really take this off without taking some of the aluminum with it. But it's okay because it actually works. In order to get a heatsink like this onto your iPad, you're going to need thermal glue. I just got it on Amazon and it comes with a little plastic soft knife. And the goal is just for you to apply some of it to the surface of the heatsink and spread it as evenly as possible, and then apply pressure to the iPad itself, preferably overnight, so that it sticks and adheres really well. You want a completely consistent surface. I have an example of an aluminum heatsink right here. So you would apply it here, but you want to have as even as a coating on the flat surface here, and then you apply it and stick it there. Even after you've used the glue, you want it to get really hot for the first time, and that will finalize the curing process so that it is fully adhered to the back of your iPad. In hindsight, I actually do not recommend to use copper. Copper holds more heat than aluminum does. It will absorb the heat from the iPad faster than if I have this aluminum brick here. But when it comes to the natural dissipation of heat from these fins to the air, aluminum is actually faster at doing that. Since we're doing long sustained tasks, we're doing drawings for hours on end, recordings for hours on end, you want to get the heat away from it as quick as possible, right? You don't want to keep the heat right here on the back of it because that doesn't really help. So I would actually recommend that you use an aluminum heatsink like this instead of a copper one because you'll actually get a little bit better performance out of that. I also recommend that because the taller the fins, the better. I got all of these copper heatsinks on Amazon. I'll share some links in the description, although I really don't recommend you do it. You shouldn't do it. But if you're handy like me and you've got some power tools, and you can't find the right size, fortunately this one came perfect size, but this one I had to adjust by cutting it with a Dremel. You can use some 600 grit aluminum oxide sandpaper to sand them down after you have cut them. So I cut this. It used to be a little bit wider and I still have some sanding to do, but the rest of this is just oh so smooth. And what you want to do is actually use a little bit of water and then you want to go in a circular motion. Wear some respiratory equipment when you do all this stuff because it kind of gets in the air. You want to do it outside and you want to make sure that this is as flat as possible. It's called lapping. Once you've done that, then you want to go ahead, clean it and use the thermal glue So try to get it as perfectly center as you can. I actually marked this down with tape in the center of my iPad. Take your time with it and don't rush, because once it's on there, it isn't coming off, at least after the first hour that it's been sitting there. So if we go ahead and zoom out again, you'll see that this 15 centimeter by about 8 centimeter piece of copper here just happened to be the perfect size for me because I was using it with my Sketchboard Pro, which then gave me another very interesting idea. And that was to attach a fan to the back of my Sketchboard Pro to not just have it passively cool, but to blow some air into the fins and have even better performance. Because if you just let it passively cool, you still feel the warmth of the iPad. But when you use a fan like this, it gets slightly warm, but not warm enough to actually make your hands sweaty. The reason this is so cool is because if we look at the front of the Sketchboard Pro and I pull out the legs, it has an opening that is the perfect size for that heatsink, especially when it's placed in the middle of the iPad. So this allows it to stick out. I tried this with the Sketchslate, but I had to actually cut out an opening there, but it was a little bit more of an aesthetic approach, but this is just marvelous. Let's put my iPad in, and then if I carefully flip it over, there is a really nice gap for the copper heatsink all around it. I used a couple pieces of aluminum that were bent at 90-degree angles and stacked them on more pieces of aluminum and taped them to the back of my Sketchboard Pro. So this is the Mark II version, but I'm going to show you a much cleaner, much more simple way to do this with the Sketchboard Pro 2. Ignore this copper tape here. I just did it for looks. But I use this tape here. It's extremely difficult to peel off once you have put it on. And it has a decent bit of thickness, which was actually helpful for me here. So I will link the Amazon link for this tape as well in case you were interested. But that's what I used to adhere this and this to the back of my iPad. But I do actually recommend that you use super glue instead. So I like this brand of super glue right here. This one is really good because of the gel. So it adheres faster and it seems to have a stronger bond than the Loctite brand that I would use in the past. The type of fan that I have here is a Noctua fan, and I highly recommend that you get one of these fans compared to any other fan because Noctua just makes the best fans and they are the quietest. And this version right here, I can't hear it at all. And it even comes with an adapter that makes it even more silent. Like even if you put your ear up to it, you won't be able to hear it. What's cool about this one though, is that now that I'm using my Sketchboard Pro 2 at my desk, I use this in my bedroom or on the couch when I want to move around, especially since it has these legs built in and I don't have to have anything extra. The next thing is that I have used Velcro to adhere to the back of my Sketchboard Pro so that I could actually use a dock and put some of that Velcro on the back of it and stick it right there. I have a right angle USB-C connector here that I use so that I can plug in an external cable to power it so that I can still charge my iPad. And this cable is built into the dock and I can route it through here so that it plugs into my iPad Pro. So now not only can I plug in a external hard drive, but I can actually power the fan. You can actually buy a USB powered fan cable that starts with a USB-A and then it ends with 2 connectors to power a fan. This will only run the fan at full speed, but that's kind of what we want. All I need to do is go ahead and power the dock. And you can see that in a moment, the fan will start moving. And so what we've got happening here is it's drawing air in and blowing into the heatsink, but there is space for the air once it gets into the heatsink to go out through the sides. It makes the iPad much cooler and it stays cooler no matter how long I use it, to the point where my iPad will not show any signs of performance dropping. The number one performance drop that I actually neglected to mention was that at a certain point, you cannot use your iPad at full brightness while it's charging because the iPad will actually reduce the brightness to an amount that you just can't override. When I have my fan plugged in, it allows me to use it at its true full brightness, no matter how long I use it, no matter how long it's been charging. So now that that's out of the way, I'm going to gently lift this off. And now this, my friends, is the Sketchboard Pro 2. You can see this is a fan that I actually ripped off of my old NDH 15. It was the Chromax Black version. I also have a single sheet of copper that I have bent so that I could set this to where there's a single point of contact. You can see it's super minimal here. It's just floating up right there. This fan has a flat edge right here, and that allowed me to just cover these two areas and then this square in super glue, and then attach that to this part of the copper right there, and it hasn't come off. Because this copper is, I think it's about 14 gauge, so it's pretty thick. It's about, I think, 1 millimeter thick, so it's actually extremely rigid. It's not gonna like slowly bend back. As a matter of fact, I had to use these metal sheet plier thingies to bend them. The copper comes wrapped in a protective foil when you first get it, and then you just put it in there and try your best. I usually put this part on a table and then just bend it as far as I can to make sure that it's 90 degrees. Once I stuck it there, glued that, and then I just pressed and held the fan there for about a minute or two, and then left it there for a few hours before I tried anything with it. You could really use whatever type of metal, but I just like the copper color and aesthetic that we've got going on. I'm going to go ahead and bring my iPad and place it into the Sketchboard Pro to show you the last important concept to make sure that you get the most out of the cooling. What you'll notice is that there is a significant gap between the copper heatsink and the cooling fan. So because of a little thing called Bernoulli's principle, you actually don't want to have the fan sitting on top of the heatsink, because when a fan is blowing air, the area around it will have a pressure differential. So all of the air around the fan here will actually get sucked in from the sides as well and blown into the heatsink. So we have even more airflow going in, which is going to remove more heat as that air is forced to escape out of the edges here as well. Now, unfortunately, this causes more noise because we have so much air going into such tight little spaces in between these little fins, but it does improve the performance. So as you can see, the fan spins really smoothly. It's relatively rigid. The only thing I would do to correct this is before I place the fan, I would have measured this and then come back with my Dremel and cut off this excess metal here, because the problem with this setup is that because the fan extends a good distance from the back of the Sketchboard Pro 2, obviously you can't use it lying flat, and you actually can't use it at a super shallow angle. I'm going to go ahead and remove my iPad for this part. Instead of all the Velcro I used before, I have these two grips here as the only other modifications I made to the back. Now, the thing about the Sketchboard Pro 2 is that it actually comes with these two aluminum little feet so that you can stick them in 3 different areas to use them as a stand. However, I found that these aren't really reliable. They wiggle, the tolerance isn't really that good, and they're still quite a bit too short. So I actually don't use these. I just keep them in their intended storage spot, and I have my own makeshift stands that rub up against these grippy pads so that it doesn't slide at all. This is a wooden bookshelf bookend keeper thing. So it's just this walnut wedge and a sheet of metal that has been screwed into the bottom of it. I spray painted all of it black and then used that tape I showed you from before to stick on this 3-pound piece of iron. I also use these felt rubbery grippy pads so that it doesn't slip. The weight will be pressing on from here and it just doesn't slide at all. And this edge will support my Sketchboard Pro and just sit in there. You can see that groove is already there. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how that looks. I have a little metal lip right here. This is just a short piece of steel that I just hammered in with screws and also taped to the very edge of my desk so that I can put my Sketchboard Pro right up against it. And then you remember these back here, I can just lean this down. Now, right now, I feel that they are not touching the grippy pad, so I'm going to pull them forward a little bit. There we go. You don't want one further back because then your surface is going to be awkward. I like how I can just take them and move them off to the side if I want my full desk. And then I can just take this, making some finer adjustments. And this is just solid. Like, now that we're almost done here, you may have noticed that there's a few dots. These are magnetic pucks that I can use for MagSafe. There is a ring of magnets and I can attach it here and it sticks magnetically. It's really, really convenient because I use my phone for references, for podcasts, entertainment, whatever, right? I like to just keep it here. What you can also do if you don't have an iPhone, you can still make use of these magnetic pucks because they usually come with a sticker on the back, but you can buy your own 3M stickers, just like the 3M tape that I had before right here. And they're the perfect size. And you can buy metal rings to put on your phone if you don't have MagSafe. And you can put it on the back of your phone and these rings will just stick to these pucks. So that's what I did with my Tourbox Elite. You may recall from a few videos ago, and I glued a metal ring here. I had to do it a couple times, so I actually used super glue at some point. So what I do is when I'm editing this video, I'll just slap that on right here and I can just work on it and I'll have my mouse over here off to the side and I'll just be editing like that. They're super convenient. So you can use these for a number of things, including a keyboard. So I use 2 metal rings on the back and I can just slap them on like so. Perfect. And what's nice about this is I can use the Touch ID right here. So I don't have to reach over there for my MacBook because it's on its own stand behind my Hexcal monitor stand. So now I can type away, sign in, do whatever I need to do, get back to working on my iPad, and I'm good to go. The last few things are going to be how I connect everything together. So I'm actually going to remove the Sketchboard Pro really quick, and I'm going to leave these there because it took me forever to align them. But since I'm working at my desk, I actually don't use that Velcro mini portable dock thing that you saw me use, the Anchor dock. I use a much more robust Thunderbolt 4 dock by OWC. This is the Thunderbolt Go Dock right here. And you see it has a power cable behind it right there. Here is where I've plugged in the fan header with a USB-A port. And this is a USB Type-C cable that I use if I want to plug in an external SSD. This cable coming out of the side of this dock is what I use to hook up my iPad. So let me give you a demonstration of what that looks like. So I'm going to move that back here. And I've bundled 3 cables together all in one. These keyboards, well, it's really one keyboard. They are by ZSA Technology and they're called the Moonlander keyboard. And I love using them because it allows me to have full keyboard access while having the Sketchboard Pro here in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the Sketchboard Pro back. I removed the keyboard on the top so that we can see how everything is working together. And so what I do is I take the power cable and I loop it back around behind the right stand for my iPad. And I love that they made the hole bigger on the Sketchboard Pro 2. I can bring it out here just like that, so it stays there. I'll move this over to the left like that, really nice and clean. It looks like it's one cable. And even though they're split together, they're split up like this. You just need to use a cable like this to connect them. So I plug one in on the right and then the main handset here, which can be used by itself. If you just want to use it as a shortcut keypad, I can plug it in here and then I plug in the power, right? That's connected to the dock with the USB-C port here. Both sides are lit up, they're connected. The fan, I need to connect it to the fan header that's plugged in to the OWC dock. And it's plugged in, but the cool thing is the fan doesn't start spinning. If I move my iPad away, I don't want the fan to be running all the time because that's going to reduce the lifespan of the fan. So now it's super clean. It looks like a one cable setup. So now all I have to do is plug in my iPad, and the moment I do, you see the fan will start to turn. And if I use Face ID to unlock my iPad, you can see it happens almost automatically because it's angled right at me. If you can imagine yourself using the M4 iPad, it would happen even faster because the camera would be right here, which is just perfect, right? So now I can put my Apple Pencil right here, or I could plug it in to one of these stands if I'm right or left-handed. Because I align this so perfectly, I can still attach this keyboard here and still use these holes for the Apple Pencil. I love the Sketchboard Pro because I can still have access to the buttons on the side here. And now my keyboard is connected. So let's see. Yep, let's look at some figure drawings here. So I can bring up the quick menu, I can bring up colors, layers. You can use the eraser, the brush, get the lasso tool, use the move tool, and get rid of that like so. I can increase and decrease brush size. This is how some of you may notice, like, how is he increasing the brush size without touching anything? Super, super handy here. Yeah, is that everything? That's pretty much how I have my whole setup here. The only other thing I can talk about are these little elbow supports here. Depending on how I'm sitting for my recording, I like to use these elbow supports to hold my elbows up so that I can use my keyboard at a perfect height, especially because this is an adjustable height armrest that clamps to your desks, and they have nice padding in here, so they're really comfortable to use. I can just move that around. It's not as free flowing as I would like, so I don't use it while I draw. Yeah, this is how I get things done. If I'm working on a piece of art, I'll just record it. I'll record the screen, swipe down like this, and hit record. I may work on the thumbnail here. I may make adjustments. It's just a super seamless, easy to work with setup. I can use this keyboard to access my MacBook. I'm still working on the kinks with this, but I've actually got my Moonlander keyboard connected to my iPad and my computer at the same time via USB and Bluetooth using a really cool Bluetooth adapter. Special shout out to Fang Bunny for showing me this really cool USB device. It's not too expensive. It's like $40, but with it, you can actually plug in a device here on this end, and it will send the data from the keyboard via USB-C, and there are two buttons here, and I can have it connect to any other device via Bluetooth at the same exact time. And this stays powered since I plug this into my full-size dock. So yeah, that's it for my desk setup. The only two things you may see on the screen here are my microphone, which I keep bumping into, and my two studio displays on either side that flank my MacBook Pro. Sometimes I may have a regular graphics tablet off to the side here. Sometimes I'll just switch to using my mouse. It's extremely useful and allows me to keep my iPad set up here for a super long time without having to move it back and forth like I used to. I used to have to remove everything when I wanted to edit and then bring it all back. So it all works pretty well. That got to be pretty long, but I wanted to make sure it was extensive for all of you who want to see if you can build something similar to this. But that's going to be it for me in this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little setup here. I'm really proud of it. I'll be checking out any questions in the comments and responding to them. If you have any ideas to make it even better, please let me know. If you have any ideas for other people to help modify this, go ahead and share. One side note is that if you do something like this, unfortunately, you will not be able to use the add-on coming out in the future with the Sketchboard Pro 2 that enables you to connect this to a VESA arm, unfortunately. Again, don't do this, but it's a cool video. I just want to show you guys how I do my stuff here. All right, keep drawing, stay balanced, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.